or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to the Masterclass. Rob, we are back after a short break and we haven't fallen out. We've just been sick, both of us respectively. I caught COVID, so don't worry, guys. The show isn't over. We are back and we're back with a bang, Rob, because Manchester United have beaten Leeds 4-2. What a fantastic performance yesterday. I really enjoyed it against the crazy conditions as well. I mean, look, the ball was just slipping all over the place. Manchester United went 2 goals up and then crazy things happened. And obviously United second half FC could see 2 goals, but great character. Rangnick makes some great choices. And we're going to talk about all of that today. But guys, as always, make sure you give us a follow at TF Masterclass. Give myself a follow at Haider_Rubbani and give Rob a follow at _Rob_B. Rob, what a great way to come back to the Masterclass with a performance like that. And while it has been a little bit rocky in terms of Rangnick's start with all the issues that we've seen, the leaks, unhappy players, loads and loads of things that are difficult to manage. Considering all that, Rangnick has 25 points. Only City have more since he's arrived with 28. He's actually doing a good job, a very good job in difficult circumstances.
I think he's doing a great job. I think 25 points over the period since he's been at the football club, as you just highlighted there, second only to Pep Guardiola, shows that this guy is doing something right. Now, obviously, the last few weeks have been very up and down, lots of turbulence, times when United should have won games that they're drawn and maybe the odd defeat here and there, but nothing too serious. What we are seeing is that Ralph Rangnick on the football pitch is sorting it out. So we are a tactic show. That's what we lean on. That's what we talk about. We like to talk about what the manager is trying to do with his players. We'll do that again for you today, as we always do. But I think it's good because I think there's lots of positives that we're seeing tactically and the way that Rangnick is setting out his team.
Biggest thing is you have to do when you're managers, you have to stop the goals leaking. And Manchester United were conceding a lot of goals, a lot of chances. Now, I'm not going to turn around and say that Manchester United haven't been conceding chances up until recently. I think, we have been conceding quite a few as a team, but we have started to stop leaking goals. And the issue hasn't been defense, Rob. It's actually been putting the ball in the back of the net. And we've seen that time and again. I mean, look, just before the last 2 games, we beat Brighton, we beat Leeds, 2 good victories, but Manchester United against Middlesbrough, struggling to put the ball in the back of the net. And as a coach, what can you actually do? Because you're coaching the side to be structured in and out of possession. They're creating chances. And it must be very, very frustrating that when you are coaching the side to play probably, I would say, quite complete in terms of, back to front, but not being able to put the ball in the back of the net is very frustrating. But if Manchester United can start to do that now, they will be in and around top 4 at the end of the season.
They will be, hopefully so. And, people know that I'm a basketball fan, and there's a good kind of catchphrase that you use in the game, which applies to this, and that is good defense leads to good offense. And I think that applies to Manchester United. So I do think that United have had defensive issues in recent weeks. When you look at some of the goals they've given up, again, they're weak, they're poor. Look at the second Leeds goal. We'll talk about that today. 2-3 errors in the lead up to it, a kind of goal that you should never give up in any circumstances, whether it be a friendly or a competitive game. It's just poor. So I do think there are defensive issues. I think they do need to be spoken about. But you're also right about scoring goals, and that has been Manchester United's problems, about not creating chances. When we looked at it up until the game before, Man United had something like 52 shots on goals across 2 games and could only put the ball in the net once. So that's not good. We saw against Leeds a set piece, a corner, ends up in the back of the net, and you think, hallelujah. But we need to see more of this. This needs to be the start of these things. And I think for Rangnick, he said when he came to the football club, you build from the back. That's where you make your foundations, and then you find your ways to score goals. And Man United have got a wealth of creative players. players that know what they're doing in the penalty box. It's just making sure that the transitions of the game are there, so you've got good opportunities to score goals rather than maybe just taking pot shots.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that we've seen with Manchester United, I think, in the past, where Bruno, we will talk about him later. He's one of those players, I think, Rob, where going for that hero ball, he still has done that. But I actually don't want to talk about, we'll talk about him later, but I do actually want to give him a little bit of praise that he has improved that side of his game. But look, we have up on the screen here, if you listen to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., we have the match summary. So some main things, Rob, here, this is from Who Scored. And looking at some of Man United's strengths in the game, look, created a high number of chances relative to the possession, stole the ball often from the opposition. That's the pressing that we like to see. They're effective at creating goal-scoring opportunities through individual skill, and they were strong at finishing. And interesting, the weakness here was the aggressiveness. And we talk about aggressiveness quite a lot, don't we? We talk about you have to a bare minimum show aggression and intensity. But what I really liked about that first half performance was that we weathered the storm in terms of, I mean, pardon the pun, but in terms of Leeds and the fans and obviously the big derby and big rivals. And then we started to play a little bit. And, you know, we've done this quite a lot, I think, over the last 4 or 5 games. Started very well. First half, very, very good, creating chances. But what I liked was that there seems to be a nice balance in midfield. There was in the first half. Paul Pogba was absolutely supreme. Bruno Fernandes was picking up nice pockets of space. And McTominay was doing a lot of the dirty work. And then that allowed the front three to really play.
Yeah, look, this was about 3 players for me, Manchester United. And I think that this is going to be a common narrative going forward. So we're going to talk about those 3 players today, and I'm sure we'll speak about them a lot more in the weeks ahead. But for me, this is all about Paul Pogba, Bruno Fernandes, and Jadon Sancho. These 3 players are your most creative players. They're the guys that can do things out of the blue that can get you a goal when you need it. So you've got to kind of rely on them to do those things and support them around there. So, you know, I think when we looked at Rangnick's tactics, and we've talked a lot about counter-pressing, the 4-2-2-2, in terms of how the funnel system, how he likes to play it. What we're seeing is that Rangnick's working those things out now to free up creative players, to allow them to go and do their job, still obviously having to work hard, but just being less reliant on it systematically. It's all very good having tactics, but if your team can't interpret the tactics or they run out of gas with 10 or 15 or 20 minutes to go, you've got a problem. So I think that's kind of, it was a story of this match. We think about with Leeds, how bad the weather was. So you had that to contend with. So you couldn't really pass the ball so much on the deck, but that's going to sap you. But United did get to 90 minutes, didn't they, Haider? And they didn't run out of gas. So there's obviously something that's physically been addressed there, because we saw in the previous 2 or 3 matches, there was some really nice counter-pressing, but they were just completely emptying the tank. And as intelligent individual footballers, you've got to find a way to get to 90 minutes and not hit the wall at 80 minutes. You know, Bruno Fernandes didn't hit the wall at 80 minutes this time, whereas in previous games, you know, he looks like he's been run over by a bus in matches because he's just been working so hard. So I think when you look at the match summary there, and we'll talk a little bit more about the formation in a second. I think key there, it says one of the things that United were poor at was the aggressiveness. And I think that's been attributed to when you look at the stats. So Scott McTominay playing in a more defensive role. Our setup here says 4-2-3-1, but it was at times a 4-1-4-1, allowing Scotty to kind of be more defensive. When you look at his stats, he only won 25% of his duels. Now, that's not good. He gave the ball away 19 times. Well, when you play in front of the back 4, that's not good. So when we talk about why Leeds got back into this game, which they shouldn't have done, and why there were problems, I think there's still core issues there that we'll see week ahead. But it's up now to Rangnick to keep addressing those, finding a formation, finding a system that negates all the bad stuff and allows you to go and do the good stuff.
Yeah, great point on McTominay. I actually did want to bring him up because what I absolutely love about McTominay is, and let's take away from his ability, but you know that as a manager, in some ways, he's a dream. And I'm going to talk about his attitude, because he will leave everything out on the pitch. He's aggressive. Mm-hmm. And we see that aggression sometimes, like you mentioned, obviously. I mean, look, I'm surprised he didn't get sent off yesterday. If I'm completely honest with you, he made, 5 or 6 fouls. I am quite surprised he didn't. But he gets stuck in, and you need that sort of character in the squad. But I think when you're playing against the top sides, the Manchester Cities, the Liverpools of the world, you can't give the ball away that much. And I think, that's an area probably Man United do need to upgrade on. But I honestly do see him as a part of this squad, and as someone who I want to have around the squad because he has that right mentality, and that's what you need sometimes. But just talking over here as well, Rob, obviously Maguire had a good performance, and Lindelof only 6.7 on the scoring. I thought Victor Lindelof was sensational yesterday. I think he pushed Sancho very close to man of the match. He carried the ball forward. Progressive carries is something that I don't think he's really known for. Carried the ball forward multiple times. Lovely pass to Sancho, and then obviously that beautiful cross for Bruno. No Varane. I don't think Varane's dropped. Obviously, we see the hysteria before every single game. Oh, so-and-so's not playing. So-and-so's dropped. Obviously, Pogba didn't start the other day. Pogba's apparently dropped. That's not the case. Rotation is a very, very key part. Man United have some key games. But going forward, do you see Maguire and Lindelof as a partnership, or do you see Varane pushing his way in? We've seen, obviously, with a lot of these English pundits saying that Varane has been terrible. I don't know what they're watching. Obviously, that gets them their clicks. But I do think that United are in a good position where Maguire needed that goal for his confidence. I'm still not convinced of Maguire. I think there are fundamental issues to his game, his speed being one of them, and his athleticism that makes him a little bit of a hindrance when we're getting transitioned on. But I do think Man United are in a great position where they have 3 centre-backs they can choose from.
Yeah, look, I think Maguire and Lindelof are competing with each other now because I think the first starter generally is Rafael Varane. I think when you look at what Varane offers, his mobility, his technical sides of his game, how he can find players out from that pocket, it's important to have a player that can do that. Now, you said there that Victor Lindelof's not known for his ball carrying skills. He was brought to Manchester United for his ball carrying skills. That's why he was brought to the club. The reason why he didn't start games in those early days is that Man United also then went out and bought Nemanja Matic, and Matic became the ball carrier out from the back, and it meant that Lindelof wasn't starting matches. So that was what Mourinho decided at that point. So Lindelof and Maguire have both got very similar attributes. So it does not surprise me when you see one of them put the ball on the deck and burst through that first channel, because they can do that. They're not quick players, but they are technical players. Now, you said that Lindelof might have been close to man of the match. Not quite sure for me, not 100%. I think he made one fantastic play, which obviously gets you the goal. And that's where he makes that 1-2, gets into midfield, lays it off to Jadon, and Jadon makes that sweet little chipped, what I call playground ball over the top to Bruno. Bruno heads it in, you score. Fantastic. I think Lindelof has got quality, but I still think Lindelof's weaknesses that we talked about every week last year are still there. It's still a thing. Maguire, exactly the same. Has qualities, was good last year, has been shocking this year. So I don't think one game negates any of those things. I still think Varane is the first piece of the puzzle in there, and he will play. He's been ill. He's had knocks. They're going to use him sparingly when there's issues there. But at the same time, I still think that he's your central piece going forward when you look at maybe the age and the fit. And it's up to Maguire then and Lindelof to prove that they're good enough to be their partners. Good partnership to be together in this kind of game where they know each other and you don't really have to mess around with things. But at the same time, yes, some good upsides, but nothing to make me that ridiculously excited. I really don't think it was anywhere close to being man of the match. I think it was at least 3 or 4 players who were ahead of Lindelof on the day.
I think it was up there with Paul Pogba and Jadon Sancho. I mean, Sancho was
really
sensational. Yeah, I do. Definitely. I think
he had a good game. He wasn't poor, but I'm just really glad that Dan James didn't run at either of them. Because if Dan James had run at either of them, this could be a very different podcast. So I was pleased. And the weather helped us with that because it meant that Leeds couldn't really play through balls or expose pace or anything like that. They had to go a bit longer, and that didn't suit them. It probably actually suited Man United more than it actually suited Leeds.
Well, we're talking about that here, obviously, and you can see with the graphic up here from Who Scored Again, United had 52 long balls, which was quite interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit because Rangnick's philosophy: get the ball, win the ball back quickly, and get the ball forward. As verticality is very, very important. And United are showing that they're starting to show they're understanding the philosophy and the instructions from Rangnick, and that's positive. And look, it was going to take time always. I was actually quite positive after, which we haven't done a couple of masterclasses, but after the Middlesbrough game, United completely dominated that. The games before that, United had dominated. The frustrating thing, it's just about clicking, wasn't it? Scoring those chances. And we've seen that the last couple of games. But the statistics are suggesting that United are going along a little bit more. which means for me that means that look, they're just trying to win the ball back quickly and get it forward and try and create scoring opportunities.
Yeah, they're trying to be more economical. So I think when you talked there about verticality, we've talked about that again a lot over since Rangnick came to the football club, and that's very true. And the stats are showing that. What I think is very interesting here is how Who Scored have projected this as saying long balls, one column, short passes, like they're two very different things. Could you not say long passes and short balls? You could do, couldn't you? So I think there's a kind of Englishness there about what is a long ball. So I don't think United are playing long ball systems. That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're getting out quickly in transition and they're playing the ball ahead of their players rather than playing it just to feet with the back to goal, which is how it should be. That's the Rangnick way, and that's the best way to do it. It's the way Liverpool do it. And Manchester City, when they play short passes, they play a ton of long passes as well. So I just think the United are reflecting that. When looking at the stats, it's key here to show that Leeds on the day had more short passes and more total passes than Man United. So again, the preconception would be that Man United, being the bigger club, will play more short balls, will keep the ball more, will play more possession football. But what we are seeing, I think, week to week now, is that this whole theory of the counter press is something that Rangnick's trying to do, but he's modifying it. So it's not full on, banging, counter pressing, get the ball, one pass and goal. It's more a case of setting the traps. Again, we've talked about it a lot. They're setting good traps and they're getting the ball back in good areas. And that means they can then play a long pass, not a long ball. And that's why players like Sancho, Pogba and Bruno become very, very important in that system, because you want them on the ball when you counter press, and you want them on the ball quickly within like one pass so they can make that choice to make a good decision.
And that's why we're saying before Paul Pogba came back, how important he was to the system. You can have your thoughts on Paul Pogba. You can have your thoughts about all the off-field stuff and whatever, blah, 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 blah. There's no doubting, Rob, that he is a supremely talented footballer. He makes Manchester United better. He's unplayable. I mean, yesterday he was unplayable. For such a tall player, his athleticism, his ball control in tight areas is phenomenal. Good comment here, Rob. Before we do go into Pogba, Sancho and Bruno in more detail, comment here from Larry saying, one of the pleasing things about Ralph is that irrespective of who the star name is, if they show fatigue, they get hauled off, very dissimilar to Ollie. I do actually want to talk about that because I sat there and tweeted, no, what are you doing, Ralph? Why are you taking Paul Pogba off? That is nuts. What are you doing?
Did Ralph respond when you did it?
Oh, Ralph was like, shut up, Haider. You do a podcast, just be quiet, nothing. I sat there and I thought, Paul Pogba, I mean, he was starting to fatigue a little bit. We have got the Atletico game coming up. So obviously United have big games coming up. But I was sitting there and thinking Paul Pogba was one of United's most dangerous players. I thought Bruno had an okay game. Obviously, he scored a goal. But I was thinking, his retention in the final third was very, very important. And I think taking Pogba off was a mistake. I didn't have an issue with Fred coming on, actually. I was perfectly happy with that. It's just I thought Pogba should have been the one that stayed on. But look, Ralph got his substitution spot on. He brought in Elanga as well. And I think that was very, very key, is that what Fred and Elanga do offer you, though, is they offer you energy. They offer you fresh legs, offer you intensity. Look, that was fantastic for Fred for the goal. Jadon Sancho with that beautiful layoff for him. But this is the thing, isn't it, that sometimes the most obvious substitutions aren't the right ones. And Rangnick got the spot on and he got rewarded. And I was delighted for Elanga because you know what? He got a coin thrown at him. Absolutely disgraceful behavior from the Leeds fans. And look, he should have buried that one. But, he finished the other one. And that was fantastic. And it was really great to see. And I think what Rangnick has done very well is that he has actually rotated the squad. And I think Ollie didn't really do that as much. Obviously, he was trying to save his job. He was trusting certain players. But we are seeing that like Paul Pogba will come off. Ronaldo will come off. I think that's very, very key for those on the fringe. And Jesse Lingard got a start as well. So these fringe players who weren't getting a look in now suddenly are in contention if they work hard in training.
Yeah, look, substitutions are not always just a gut reaction from a manager. It's about data interpretation. So what do they know, say, about Paul Pogba? Well, Paul Pogba's been brilliant recently. He was brilliant again against Leeds United. He dominated the first half the way he was playing in that floating 8 role where he wasn't really in the double pivot. So, we showed before that it was a kind of 4-2-3-1 shape, but it was more 4-1-4-1. It allowed Pogba to get into the left channel. It allowed him to get at the fullback. And we know that he skinned the fullback 2 or 3 times. But I think what was important there is that you must protect Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba would have played 90 minutes if you'd let him. But what happens if Paul Pogba turns his ankle and is out of the Atletico game? Well, that could be the difference between you qualifying for the next round of the Champions League and not. So Paul Pogba, I would say at this moment of time, as we stand still here, is the most important individual footballer at Manchester United. Why? Because he's the only one that can do the things he can do. Bruno Fernandes is great. Ronaldo can score you goals now and then. Jadon Sancho is popping. But no one can do what Paul Pogba's doing at Man United. And no one in Europe can do what Paul Pogba does. So this is why when we talk about him, it's not a case of just lauding him or saying that you're a Pogba fan or not a Pogba fan. Go look at the metrics, go look at the stats. It's all there in black and white. I agreed with the pull at the end because I think at that moment with 25 minutes to go, you needed some energy. And you just said it there. You know, that's what Fred and Elanga give you. That was an energy substitution to allow Manchester United to motor on. Because in other matches between 60 and 70 minutes, Man United have died in those games. You know, they might have had 50 shots and they're drawing and, you know, then getting knocked out to likes of Middlesbrough in the FA Cup. So I think Rangnick's learning those things and knowing what his limitations are with his squad. So I think that when you look at kind of Pogba's overall contributions, the effort level is really high. Some people are saying, oh, well, he's in the shop window and all of this. I don't believe that at all. I just think he's fit now. And because you've got a fit Paul Pogba, you still need to look after him and make sure he's there available to the end of the season.
He looks leaner, Rob. That's what I'm seeing. He's looking, you know, he's looking, like you said, fit. He was meant to come back, wasn't he? Maybe sort of just before New Year, I think. But he obviously didn't come back till February time or around about then. I think that was actually well managed by Rangnick and the medical team. But what I do also want to say is that I think we can kind of put to bed. He can be inconsistent, don't get me wrong, but he's playing in his best position now. Rangnick said this: I want Bruno and Pogba as 2/8s, and that's where he's excelling, and you're getting him forward. And if United can keep hold of Paul Pogba and he can obviously play like this more regularly, and you know you put the pieces in around him, because Jadon Sancho is massive for Paul Pogba as well. We talked about in the Europa League final where I believe Pogba should have played off the left because we were playing against a very low block. We were lacking someone that had good ball retention in the final third. Rashford is wasteful. And then now Jadon Sancho offers that, doesn't he? So you can almost push Paul Pogba a little bit further back into that midfield. And then you've got two players of really high quality, high IQ, good decision-making, great ball-playing ability. And if you get the other pieces in place, then United are going to have a good side going forward.
Yeah, and that's why the 4-1-4-1 smells good. Does it pass the smell test? Well, what does it allow? It means that McTominay, being a more aggressive player, can go do some chasing. So you can allow him to be in those areas. I agreed with what you said earlier on. I think Scott McTominay should have been sent off. He definitely had 2 yellow cards in there somewhere. The referee had a shocker, no doubt about it. But I think with Paul Pogba, I like to see him in that floating 8 role as he played against Leeds, where he can get in the channel, get close to the box, and impact the game. You know, this is what it's about. Paul Pogba can do the number 6 duties, but Paul Pogba's not great at them. He doesn't even really like it, but he'll do as he's told. You know, if he's playing number 6, he will do number 6 things. But then, of course, fans will get annoyed when he loses the ball in tighter areas because obviously he doesn't pass it quickly. But when he's at the top end of the pitch, it allows him to link with the most dangerous players that Man United have got. So I want to see this 4-1-4-1 kind of continue, because it means that within the system that you can flick to 4-3-3 very, very quickly. You can get the wider players like Sancho into more dangerous areas in the box. And it's not a completely rigid wide system. And this is what Ole's system was. When we talked 4-2-3-1, the double pivot was very rigid. Fingers, that's what we always do here. That's how the double pivot works. That's not what United are doing in a 4-2-3-1 now. It's not how it is. You're getting one player who's linking with the centre-back, sitting there in a single pivot, and the other player, obviously in this case Paul Pogba, but it can be other players, is now going. You could play Hannibal in that system. You can play Fred in that system. Fred has showed that he's a number 8 up here in his brain. And when he gets in the box, he can make good number 8 decisions. So we saw that against Leeds. We've seen it in other games. And I think Rangnick will carry on with this now, because the 4-2-3-1 was probably too, I'm talking about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's 4-2-3-1, probably too rigid, impinging your best players. Rangnick is finding ways to unlock those players.
It's what we said after the West Ham game last time we did the masterclass, and there were times where Bruno Fernandes was suddenly in the number 6 position, picking up the ball, and you saw McTominay going forward, you saw Fred going forward, etc.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about fluidity of system. That's why when people say, and that's why I don't think 4-2-3-1 is a negative system. It's just how a coach interprets and implements it. And we're not playing with double pivots, and I think it suits the squad. I was look, I'll be honest with you, Rob. When I saw that Rangnick was going to the 4-1-4-1, I like the idea of it, but I did have concerns about McTominay. And I think, like I said earlier, I really do like his energy, his passion, his desire, his attitude, and I want him in that squad. But I think if United, he can be a liability then. I think that's the next area that United need to be looking at in the window. I know obviously that's forward thinking. But for me, if you want to be able to play Bruno and Pogba in those positions, you need someone there who's, one, looks after the ball better, because that's very key. And that's why I think when United in second half of games have been struggling, is because of the fact they have no one in there who can slow down and control the tempo of the play. Our midfield is just letting the opposition through, and you're going from one end to the other, end to end. Opposition attack, we attack. Sometimes, and that's what United did so well. I know we're looking back at Paul Scholes and players like Michael Carrick, but it's what the top sides have. You look at Man City; they're able to do that. Fabinho does it for Liverpool, Rodri, etc. They hold on to possession, take the sting out of the game, and they can dictate up the tempo when it needs to be done, or take the sting out of the game.
And that's why I don't like the term defensive midfielder. Go and buy a defensive midfielder. You don't need a defensive midfielder. You need a ball player. You need someone that can get the ball in the deck and go from A to B, 15-yard pass, and play it 99% out of the 100 all the time. That's what you need in there. So you need someone that can be ball dominant, that can take the ball off centre-backs and full-backs, can win the ball back and then distribute it. So when you say to Scott McTominay, go and win the ball, Scott McTominay can do that. But if he's losing the ball 19 times in front of the defence, which he did against Leeds, that's a problem. If he's only winning 25% of his duels, that's a problem. That's showing that he's actually not being efficient at winning the ball back. He's only winning the ball back 1 out of 4 times. So what Paul Pogba needs, or Bruno, whoever's there in those floating 8 roles, is not a Nemanja Matic. You don't need someone that kind of just sticks and never twists. You need someone who's cultured. You need a Ruben Neves. You need someone who's going to move the ball on quickly, but then also break forward. So that is what Scotty's doing. So Scotty, I actually think, is good at that and actually underrated. Fred is good at it, but underrated. They can go and play the number 8 roles and have duties on the edge of the box on the opposite end of the pitch. The issue is that first wave of play at Haider, getting the ball off one of those centre-backs or maybe one of the full-backs and then moving it quickly into someone's feet so you can turn and go. That's the method of the counter-press. You win the ball, you play that quick pass. That's got to come out. And I think that's where McTominay's weaknesses really do kind of glare. No problem for him. He's what he is. He's that kind of player. He can improve. A good coach will improve players in that way and say, right, get the ball and, make this short pass rather than that short pass. And I think that's a learning process for him. He's not a kid anymore. He's got a future at Man United, but you do definitely need a number 6 to come in there to do those duties. I'm not going to say you need a defensive midfielder. I'm going to hold on to that because you don't need someone who's just purely defensive. You don't need an Ndidi. That's not what you need.
No, definitely not.
Need someone who's actually can get the ball, who's actually more Paul Scholes.
Someone like Neves, to be honest. I know he's not pure number 6, but he's
a modern number 6. He is the pure modern number 6. Exactly what a number 6 is now is someone who gets the ball down and doesn't go completely long and doesn't have to make these mad tackles like a Wan-Bissaka style kind of sliding along the ground. You get the ball, you turn, your chin goes up and you work it. That's what Man City do. That's what Fernandinho does. That's what Rodri does. That's what Kante does. They win the ball back and they give it simple and they go. And that's really, I think, what Man United need. That's why Declan Rice is the perfect player on the wish list, because he'd be the perfect number 6, but he could also burst forward, do the number 8. He could be a number 10. He can get in the other end of the box and score your goals as well.
Declan Rice has the most progressive carries out of any midfielder in the league, I believe. And
it's no surprise that's why West Ham are where they are. If Declan Rice breaks his leg tomorrow, West Ham come 10th. Yeah. That's the bottom dollar. So this is how I think it goes with individuals. So this Man United team, if you brought a midfielder that performed that function and you sign Paul Pogba to a new contract, then you've suddenly got a really, really good midfield. But at the moment, Man United's midfield is still a little bit fractured.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the area they need to definitely be investing in in the summer. But look, Rob, let's talk about Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho is a player that I absolutely adore him. I think he's fantastic. I was so excited for us to sign him. It's taken 2 years for him to come. And something that we've been saying on the masterclass is just give it time, because it does take time to adjust to a new league. He's come from a very defined system at Dortmund to a system which has been very fractured. We've seen that obviously under Oli. It was a struggle. He was in and out of the team. He's playing on the right. He's playing on the left. I actually very much like him on the left, and I like Rashford more on the right. I don't think Rashford's a solution on the right. The reason why is because I think with Rashford on the right-hand side, it forces him then, he's very predictable cutting in. It forces him to make those back post runs. We saw that obviously in the game against West Ham where he scored the winner. I think that he holds width better. He looks to play crosses rather than always cutting inside. But look, Jadon Sancho has been playing off the left-hand side. Rangnick has been swapping his wingers. They're swapping sides during the game. We saw that a few times. We saw that against Brighton, and it didn't work, in my opinion, when we moved Sancho over to the right. We saw it again. Jesse was on the left at times. But look, you can't look past what a great performance Sancho had. 21 final third passes, 8 touches in the opposition box, 3 successful take-ons, 3 chances created, 2 assists. He was sublime. He's starting to cook. He's starting to pop. We've been saying this. And build this team around him. He's phenomenal. And I actually think I'm quite liking the combination of him and Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw was a bit hit and miss yesterday for me. He did some great things. Defensively for that goal was, in my opinion, shocking. Losing his man, or not looking around and seeing the run in behind him. But how good can Jadon Sancho be, and how important is he for Man United moving forward? Because his decision making and his end product is so mature for his age. And that's what you see with young players, don't you? That young players, Elanga, I think, is a perfect example. They've got potential, but perhaps decision-making and that execution is off. But Jadon Sancho has it in bags already. I think he can be an absolute phenomenal player for Man United.
Well, look, we've also got to remember 2 things, haven't we? Jadon Sancho was targeted by Man United and other Premier League clubs as well. Why? Because at Borussia Dortmund, for his age group, he was the best player in the world for his age. So his ceiling is really, really high. So we're starting to see the first kind of turns of that. I've never been worried about Jadon, simply because I do think that when you come to Man United, it can take a long time for you to get there. Sometimes a player is more Donny van der Beek and never quite gets over the edge and has to go somewhere else to prove it. And some players like Jadon, you just wait and see and you work with them. It's interesting, we talk about stats and everyone knows to kind of take it from a metric standpoint. When you look at his final season at Dortmund, 100% of his productivity, so that's a big number, literally all of it was coming through the centre and the left. Nothing from the right. Yet we all feel that Jadon Sancho is a right winger or a right-sided forward. So I think there are reasons why Man United have gone that way and why Ralph is kind of starting him on the left in the double up. So I think when you look at the pairing, so you just mentioned Luke, I think when you look at Shaw and the way he overlaps and opens that up and say compares that to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who can overlap, but it's just has no productivity, it means that Jadon's always going to get an extra second or 2 of space and time on the left. So this is why we're seeing him starting on that side. I think it's also pertinent to mention Marcus Rashford. I think Marcus is massively out of form. He really, really is. Decision-making isn't there. Work rate isn't there. And I think we're seeing exactly why he's not getting on a football pitch. And it shows, doesn't it? In years gone by, Marcus Rashford would have been the first name on that team sheet against Leeds, wouldn't he? Mancunian, heart and soul, get him on against Leeds. No, that's not how Rangnick does business. Rangnick does it on truth. And what's really happening. And I think when you look at Jadon, I just think that he can be the superstar of this team in years to come. We talk about Ronaldo with the number 7 on his back. This boy is the future number 7. He'll have it either next year or the year after. And this football club will be built around him and others like him. Man United can't win trophies just with one Jadon Sancho, but they can win trophies if he's part of that system. I like what he's doing. I think his body of work is great. He's an artist on the football pitch. I love the street football. You think of how he does things. It's all little touches and flicks. He dribbles with the ball really well, and he's really economical. The other side of it, Haider, that people don't talk about, is that he works really hard. He really does. He goes and helps the fullback. He gets back into position. Might not be the most natural defender, but in the modern game, it's about movement. It's about mobility. And he's got all of that in stacks. And at the same time, he's also very, very dangerous once he creeps into that penalty box. He would be fantastic as one of the front three at Liverpool or in Manchester City's team. So we need to understand that and make sure that we can assimilate him now into our team.
Oh, he would. He'd be starting for both teams, Rob, and both managers absolutely adore him. I really do think the sky's the limit for him. Obviously, he needs to. Whoever's the next manager needs to build a side around him, and obviously, I think what's benefited him the most is that there is a defined system now, and the players are getting coached into it, players understanding their roles, and he's the one. And Rangnick said it when he came in. Rangnick is a big fan of him. Wanted to sign him at Leipzig before he went to Dortmund. But I think he was always the player. There's two players, him and Donny van der Beek. Obviously, Donny's gone now, but I thought two players that have come from defined systems with a manager who coaches his side, very well drilled, etc. And I thought that definitely Sancho was going to be someone who would thrive. But you make a good point. I believe only, was it Shaw and Wan-Bissaka? I can't remember. If anyone has the answer in the comments, there was two players that made more recoveries. I think Sancho made something like 9 recoveries or something like that. And that's what you need from your wide players. And we look at Rashford. I mean, he didn't make that run back against Southampton. Southampton scored that goal. I mean, what is going on with Marcus Rashford? Have you heard anything sort of on the inside? Because it's quite worrying to see him so out of form. With Marcus Rashford, always for me, Rob, even if he wasn't playing well, his decision-making wasn't great, or he was wasteful, he always worked hard. And we're not seeing that. And that's a concern for me.
I don't think there's anything kind of like in inverted commas going on with Marcus. I think kind of what we're hearing is that he's been in a bit of a funk. He's just finding it difficult to do certain things. He needs to think his way out of these problems rather than just run his way out of them. So I think that is sometimes Marcus's weakness in terms of what you just said there about decision making. When that goal of Southampton was right in front of me. And I did have a moan about it on other shows and on Twitter. And I said, we wanted him to run back in that moment and he just kind of stopped. That's actually a decision up here. That's not lungs or heart. That's your brain saying stop. His brain needs to go, I need to get back in that position. Now, I like that about Jadon. Jadon is a forward-thinking player. He's a flair player. He's a player you associate with scoring goals and getting in the opposition box. But he doesn't shirk those responsibilities. That comes up here. And I actually think that's where maybe he's progressed, because I think under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he was struggling in that 4-2-3-1 shape and having to come back and help fullbacks. But in this shape, the way that Rangnick plays it in a 4-1-4-1, more players around you, a shape he's more familiar with, and also not impinging him going forward. So this is not saying, Jadon, you can't get on the front foot. This is why I'm impressed with Ralph. Ralph is allowing the attacking players to go and attack. They're the guys that are going to win you matches and win you points. So don't hold them back. So I think for Marcus, he now needs to drop in with what all these other guys are doing, because we're seeing some success in midfield that wasn't there under Ole. And Marcus, if he wants to be a player that plays in this 4-3-3 or kind of this more system of playing a 4-1-4-1, he's got to do that extra bit of work and then go and put the ball in the net. He's still Marcus Rashford. Yeah, he could pop tomorrow and we'd all be like, oh, he scored a hat-trick, he's back. And he needs to prove that. But he needs to work his way back in the team now, because I think it showed against Leeds that he's not now an automatic starter. And he probably shouldn't be an automatic starter. I think it's a good decision by Ralph.
Yeah, and it's like Larry was saying earlier with his comment, and Alan's sort of echoing that. Players who aren't playing or producing get benched no matter who they are. And that's something I actually I'm actually admire that about Ralph. Well, we have spoken about Pogba a fair bit, but let's talk about him again quickly, because this was his first half statistics against Leeds, and that's 100% successful passes into penalty area, 100% successful take-ons. That was the most. 5 attempted dribbles, 5 successful dribbles. 5 ground duels, 1 as well. So he's getting stuck in doing the defensive side. 2 chances created, 1 big chance created. I mean, the one for Ronaldo, I can't believe Ronaldo missed that. But that was just, he had Forshaw on toast during the whole game, to be honest. He couldn't deal with him. But that was just sublime. You're thinking about the conditions, and look, it felt like, obviously back in the day, the pitch will be waterlogged. These pitches are very modern and they haven't got much mud in them, and half of them are made up of that artificial grass. But there was just puddles everywhere, and the way that his balance still stuck, for such a tall player, it was really enjoyable to watch. And people can dislike Paul Pogba. I know there are people that don't like him, and they want him to leave the club. But United become a worse side when he's just not there. It's just a simple fact. And you've seen the statistics this season to suggest that when he did play before he got injured. I mean, there is a concern in there around his injury record. He does get injured quite a fair bit. And if you're going to go and fork out big wages on him, is that a bit of a concern? I mean, where is he in this terms of contract? I personally don't think he'll sign a new contract. I think he'll go elsewhere, but I would absolutely love him to stay.
Well, like I said to you, Haider, before the show, the longer this goes on now towards the end of the season, the more likelihood that Paul Pogba will sign for Man United. So why do I say that, and kind of where's the standpoint in there? There's two or three ways of looking at this. We'll talk a little bit more about the game in a second, but just to kind of give everyone a heads up on it. What we know about Paul Pogba, first of all, is that Man United were concerned about his injury record. He spent a lot of time on the treatment table. If you're going to pay someone £300,000, £400,000, £500,000 a week, you better be sure that they're helping you win football matches. Paul Pogba has been great, I think, over maybe a 2 or 2.5 year period, but has spent way too long on the treatment table. So that's one part of it. This is why Man United did not want to pull the trigger on the deal early. But what does that do then? That allows Paul Pogba to now look at the marketplace. And Paul Pogba, being the player he is truly elite. Now, you just said there, Man United are a worse team without Paul Pogba. Man United are night and day without Paul Pogba. If you don't have Paul Pogba in there, you haven't got anyone that can do what he does. So I'm not just bigging up Paul Pogba. This ain't the Paul Pogba fan show. It really isn't. It's about metrics, and it's about how you affect winning. 100% successful passes into the penalty area, 100% successful take-ons, the most on the football pitch. And he's dribbling, he's getting the ball down, he's winning duels, he's creating chances and big chances. What more do you want? Now, I'll say this as well, because I have said this in the past. If you sell Paul Pogba goes, then you can bring in another player that isn't like Paul Pogba and not as good as Paul Pogba and find ways to win. You could bring in someone like Hannibal, but then you have to maybe restructure your midfield, buy one or two better kind of more ball-playing players from out the back, like a Michael Carrick, someone like that who can get it down on the deck and do those things. And then you're having a big restructure, Haider. You're having to buy 6 players to really mitigate losing one. That isn't good business. That's not clever. So what would be clever here is to now say to Paul Pogba, we do not want to see you at another English Premier League team. We do not want to see you at Real Madrid. We do not want to see you at Barcelona. Please do not go back to Juventus. Here's your deal. This is the money you wanted. Sign it. I think if they do that, we've been told directly from certain quarters that he will sign a contract. So it's up to Manchester United to give him his contract. And I think that he's playing himself, like people say he's in the shop window. Well, of course he's in the shop window. But, you know, in the same way that Jesse Lingard might have been at West Ham last year, but no one said, oh, Jesse, you're just in the shop window. You're not any good. No, Paul Pogba is the best at what he does. And he's showing that now. But staying fit is key. And I think that, say he breaks his ankle tomorrow, Man United might go, no, actually, we don't want to give you that deal because we're not sure about your fitness. However, if he plays from now to the end of the season and is doing what he is doing, Paul Pogba can go in there with a blank check and say to Man United, sign this because you need me more than I need you. And I think that's kind of where we stand now. If United want to be a successful team in the future, you need to keep your best talent, not let them go.
And that's why, you know, the title of the show was Can Pogba, Sancho and Bruno? And it's been a long time, Rob, since we had players of that caliber, you know, in terms of ball playing ability. Can they help salvage United's season? Look, you don't want to get too high, don't get too low. I think United still are a very inconsistent side. But there are, you know, there's definitely signs if they can keep those 3 players at the club, obviously Pogba being the one leaving, you can start to build something with whoever the next manager is. And then any manager in the world would absolutely love Paul Pogba in their side. They would love Bruno Fernandes, they love Jadon Sancho. They're all 3 very, very good players. And Man United aren't blessed with a lot of technically gifted players, in my opinion. And you can't lose them. You've got to keep them and then build a team around them. But we will talk now. I mean, something I do want to bring up as well is that Pogba does look happy, doesn't he, under Rangnick? You know, he's playing in the position that he's preferred. He loves playing with Bruno Fernandes. You can see that between them. There's a lovely chemistry between them. They get on very well off the pitch as well. So I don't believe he's unhappy, but ultimately Man United need to start winning trophies. They've got players there who will be entering into their prime. Bruno Fernandes wants to win trophies. Jadon Sancho will want to win trophies. And United have to match that ambition. And they haven't done that, let's be honest, over the last 8 years, 9 years or so.
That's right. Look, I addressed this on the Promised Land podcast, my other podcast that I do. And I talked there's a lot in the media about dysfunction at Man United and disharmony in the dressing room and factions and, people kind of, putting off Ronaldo versus Maguire and all this. It's not true. Now, the players are unhappy when results are not going well, and they might make comments to people that they're not happy, but that's normal. You need to be like that. No one is in that dressing room looking at Paul Pogba and his deal and going, oh, we're not happy about this. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work like that. This bunch actually do get on with each other, which is why it's mystifying sometimes when they let each other down, because you kind of think to yourself, well, that didn't work this week. Why did it not work? I think when you look at United's performances, say, over the last 3, 4, 5 games under Rangnick, the issues have not really been about the technicalities of the game. It's been about being able to do it for 90 minutes, get to 70 minutes, had a half decent game, 20 minutes, it all just collapses, longer balls, players coming on and off, doesn't work. What do you do then? So Rangnick's fighting fire, and it needs to be less firefighting. I think this is kind of what Rangnick is good at. He's good at getting his players to be organised and finding better ways. In the middle of that is Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba playing in that role in a 4-1-4-1 means he can help defensively, he can drop deeper, get the ball, move it on quickly. But more than that, he can be an attacking player. He can be on the edge of the box. He can look up. He can see Ronaldo. He can see Bruno. He can have Jadon on the outside and Luke Shaw overlapping. If you've got Paul Pogba on the ball there, you're in a really, really good place. So I think we need to see more of that. Give him his contract. I don't care how much the Glazers pay people. I say it all the time. It's the Glazers' money. Pay players that you deserve to keep. I get there's a lot of Man United fans who are totally the opposite and are like, sell Paul Pogba, he's this, that, and the other. Well, if you sell Paul Pogba, be careful what you wish for. Because if you don't get, if you sell Ronaldo and you replace him with Antonio Valencia, like Man United once did, you could have years there of trying to fix a position, trying to fix the number 7 shirt. It didn't work for years. I think if you get rid of Paul Pogba on this occasion, you don't pay him, you might be finding a midfielder coming in who doesn't quite fit the bill.
You're saying hello to John McGinn, Rob. That's who you're saying hello to. No,
well, that's what we're talking about. Aren't we talking about John McGinn? You're totally right. You're talking about that level of player from a mid-table Premier League team. Now, not saying anything bad about John McGinn. I think he's a fine player at some of the stuff he does. He's not fit to lace Paul Pogba's boots when we talk about certain metrics. So you've got to be careful. Paul Pogba works a lot harder for the team than people give him credit for. And if you don't believe it, go and look at his running stats. His running stats show that he puts the miles in. It's just that he's a bit of a kind of lanky Bambi type runner, isn't it? He just looks like someone who's not running very hard, not running very far. When you look at the metrics, it shows that he does all of that work. They're 5 ground duels won. That's more than McTominay won. It's just bottom dollar. And McTominay was the guy tasked to go and win the ball back at Leeds, not Pogba. So I think Pogba does all of those things as well. It's just that perception is sometimes more powerful than fact.
Yeah, it's a great point, actually, because McTominay looks like he's working harder, running harder, goes into tackles, more aggressively, and he looks like he's throwing himself around more. Yeah. But the statistics, that's why you can't discount the statistics. You also have to look at the eye test as well. But statistics are that foundation, aren't they? And you build off it, and that's how you make it. So sometimes you feel something. I do this. I go to Old Trafford, I feel something, and then I go and check it against the stats. And sometimes I go, is that real then? Did I really feel that? And sometimes I retract. I go back and go, actually, do you know what? He did do well. He did take his man on. He did this and the other. And you can then kind of rewrite it in your head a little bit. But then that's because you've had time to think about it. We've said this about our show, haven't we? That our reactions sometimes are very different immediately post-match to the following day. It gives us time to breathe and allow all the data to kind of seep into our brains a little bit more. But it happens with that. I get with people who look at Paul Pogba, they think he's lazy, he doesn't do his job. Then when you look at the stats, it completely shows that he's an elite midfielder and he does all the work and does all the skill bits as well. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's move on to Bruno Fernandes, the third player out of, the sort of the standout players yesterday from Manchester United. And look, just looking at Bruno Fernandes' goal involvements, it's just absolutely crazy. 60 goal involvements, Premier League goal involvements from Man United in 76 appearances. That's 35 goals and 25 assists. It's absolutely staggering. And it's also important to notice he scored his 9th goal in the Premier League yesterday against Leeds, and he's not taking penalties. So, and that's a big thing. I think he should be on penalties. He's better than Ronaldo at penalties, in my opinion. I don't know why he's been... I do know why. And he should also be on set pieces. Again, I don't know why Ronaldo is taking set pieces. I can't remember the last time he scored a free kick. But look, Bruno Fernandes, again, his numbers you can see up on the screen. I don't think he had a great game, Rob, if I'm honest with you. I thought he was effective. Obviously, again, look, 6 ground duels won, 4 ball recoveries. So he does the hard work. I've seen people say that he doesn't work hard for the team. He's probably the one that works harder than anyone else, in my opinion. It's very visible that he does. He scored a goal and he got an assist. Fantastic, almost Bergkamp-esque. A little flick round strike, I believe it was. And then the pass to Elanga. That was a fantastic goal. But you're looking at Bruno Fernandes. What I like about him since Rangnick has come in, and look, he still does hero ball. It's still frustrating. He loses possession, but he's definitely become more disciplined. He's definitely not just running as a headless chicken when he's pressing and doing his own thing. He's part of a system, and he understands that he's got a role. He's got the pressing triggers. And then what I also like about him is that his ball retention has got better. And look, he's got a really good an eye for a quality pass. He really does. He does do that. He's created the most chances in the Premier League this season out of any player, more than Kevin De Bruyne. Or I believe maybe he's just behind Trent. He's up there anyway with Trent Alexander-Arnold. Very, very creative. Yeah. You can say what you want about Bruno Fernandes. He can frustrate, but he's clutch. And he comes up with big moments, and he's effective, and he scores goals, and he gets assists. And what I did like, I do want to talk about this. I tweeted about it. I want to see Bruno Fernandes as a false 9 for Man United. I liked what we saw when he sort of played there very, very briefly. I want United to push Pogba further forward. I want to maybe see Fred in their midfield with his energy. And then, you can decide who plays on the right-hand side, whether it's Elanga, whether it's Jesse or Rashford. I mean, I think that spot is still, it's up for grabs, and you have Sancho off the left. I think that would work really, really well. And then you still get Bruno's off the ball movement. I think that's where he's most dangerous, getting him into dangerous areas. And you have Pogba and Sancho as the creators for him, supplying chances and spotting those runs. If Rangnick can build on that, I think it's actually something that will suit all those 3 players' skill set.
So are you going to say out loud, Haider, in front of our audience, that you want Cristiano Ronaldo dropped?
I want Cristiano Ronaldo.
You're going to say it out loud?
Minutes to get managed.
Yeah, that's good. That's a better answer. That's a good answer.
Because I think
good journalist answer. I like that one.
No, but one thing I'll say about Ronaldo is that he is working hard. You can't doubt he's pressing. He's actually people said before he's never going to press. We had this discussion. He is pressing. It's just that you're seeing his age now. It doesn't mean he won't come up with goals, but the right decision was to take him off, wasn't it? Against
he's pressing, but he's not effective in the press. So there's a difference. So, what we're trying to achieve here, I think, at Man United is for players to become economical and good at their jobs and doing 7 things rather than just doing 1 thing. So Cristiano, you get the ball in that, obviously, the other game recently, on the edge of the box, slams it in the bottom corner, fantastic goal. Cristiano can do that. You want Cristiano on the ball in those moments. But I completely agree with you. And this is obviously, I've said this on our show before. Bruno Fernandes could be the best false 9 in the world. I really do believe that. When you look at kind of how Man City play with their false 9, how Liverpool play with their false 9, obviously with Firmino, but obviously at times with Jota, Salah filling in there at times as well, every now and then. It's about the system and how do you make the system work? And look at the goal. Look at his goal. That was him running in deep from a false position into a striker's position. And what you had was Ronaldo kind of more coming from the channel. So in the constructs of the game of a 4-1-4-1, you can kind of play Bruno in a false role, but also doing other things in midfield. So you had there, obviously, Pogba playing this floating 8 role, meaning that he gets to the left channel, and you have Bruno kind of moving around more, but getting in the box. Bruno Fernandes is less of a player when he's being asked to sit in a more conventional midfield, either in a 3 behind a 3 or 20, 30, 40 yards away from the striker with the ball on the deck. He's not very good at that. That's why he gets pulled for Portugal, because he plays that role for them, plays deeper, loses the ball, doesn't affect the play in the opposition box, and then you pull him on 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, whatever you want to do to kind of change your game plan. So I think that showed under Solskjaer as well, that when Ronnie came back to the football club, that was an issue, that Bruno was not getting up towards the top end of the pitch, not scoring goals, not delivering the metrics. When we look at here, there's kind of 76 appearances, 35 goals, 25 assists. This has started to be recovered now in recent weeks because he's playing a more productive, progressive style of football and being allowed to go and affect the game. I think under Solskjaer, he simply had dropped off in those areas. It just wasn't working for him. He'd gone from being last season the most important player at the club to just being another midfielder. Now, that's a problem because he needs to be elevated as being one of your leaders on the football pitch. I think when you take responsibility away from him, he actually becomes less disciplined, less of a player, less creative, less assertive.
Petulant, Rob. He complains a lot.
Look, he's petulant, but he's always going to be petulant. But he will be petulant to the day he leaves Man United. He will never not be petulant. But you have to work, again, within the numbers and within what happens. So look at the goal. That was his fault. It was his fault. So we talked about Luke Shaw at the back post. Luke should have covered the runner, no doubt. But Bruno can't wait for the ball to come to him when the ball is coming out of defence.
That for me, I got called crazy. I thought that was a foul. Genuinely thought that was a foul.
I've watched it a lot. It's not foul. It's not foul because Bruno over exits. His fault. He knows that he's lost the ball and he kind of tells the referee, I've lost the ball and watch me roll around for a bit. And even after that, when it goes to VAR and they're checking it, when VAR says goal, he gets up and just kind of goes, ugh. So I think that if that was Scott McTominay, it probably might have been given as a foul because it's considered more honest. Do you get what I'm saying? But I'm not too worried about that. I'm not bothered about that too much. I don't want Bruno to lose the ball there, but I'd rather Bruno not be the player who's coming back for the ball there. Do you get what I'm saying? So in a more kind of in a better shape in a 4-1-4-1, he would not be the guy coming to pick that pass there. That would have been Pogba or someone with better ball skills. I think Bruno can create on the edge of the opposition box in terms of ball skills. I don't actually think he's very good in our third of the pitch. He gives the ball away a lot.
Yeah.
So I think there as well, ball recovery is really, really good. I think that's good. 4 ground duels, 1-6, really, really good. 50 touches, 100% shot accuracy. Again, these are things we need to see from Bruno week in, week out. And we're seeing that now with his work rate being more disciplined. It was only about 5, 6, 7 weeks ago we were doing shows saying that Bruno had lost his discipline. I think he's got that back a little bit. I think he also understands that Man United win games. He's got to be a big part of that. He can't be a passenger. And the issue was that Ronaldo being on a football pitch was taking all the opportunity away from Bruno. And now he's creating his own opportunities again, like he was last season, where it didn't really matter who played as striker last year, did it? Bruno was like, I'm still getting in the box. Now he's kind of let go of that. Ronaldo's doing a little bit more channel work, and it's allowing Bruno to actually score the odd goal now, getting onto the penalty spot. And that goal was really, really good. A real false 9 strikers finish.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to, Rob, we've got 2 more topics now. We'll quickly sort of just touch on David De Gea, then we will do a forward thinking. There is a question here from PA saying, thoughts on the Atletico game. We will touch on that as a forward looking piece. But David De Gea, we have a screen grab here from Fabrizio Romano with some comments from David De Gea saying, now I feel as if I'm from Manchester. Honestly, I don't see myself away from Man United. I just feel like anyone else from Manchester where you are loved and welcomed, I believe that says in your home or is your home. I've been here for many years. That's very, very interesting because David De Gea is a very, very big topic at the moment. All the analysts, all the stats geeks will turn around to you and say, David De Gea is the worst goalkeeper in the Premier League. No, I'm joking. They don't say that. But they do make some valid points in terms of his distribution. I mean, I'm seeing that he was getting blamed for, I think it was against Brighton, I believe. No, sorry, against Leeds, where he basically miskicks it and Leeds get a chance and then he makes a save. It's a very, very difficult conversation. I see both sides of the argument. If Man United do want to go forward and be a side which is going to build out from the back, you need a sweeper keeper. And that was something Henderson was doing. I'm not a big Henderson fan, if I'm honest, but there were times, remember the Spurs game last season where he did that very, very well. Where are you sitting on David De Gea? It does look like he's probably going to get a new contract, which means he's locked into Man United for at least another 3 to 4 years. He will have his prime years at Manchester United. Great shot stopper. He does worry me that he doesn't come off his line. He isn't great with the ball at his feet. Is this something that he can be coached and trained going forward? The biggest problem is that if you're going to give David De Gea a new contract, I absolutely love David De Gea, and I'm very sitting on the fence with this because I do see the merits of, and I do see his weaknesses with the ball at his feet. But let's say Ten Hag comes in. It's just an example. He'll want to play out from the back. Is it counterproductive that Man United go and give De Gea a new contract now before the new manager can come in and say, yes, I want this player and that player? Because you're almost doing that what United have done for years, where a manager asks for Louis van Gaal asks for Mane, and then you don't give him Mane. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So is it better to wait to find out who the manager is and then start issuing new contracts? Or should United be issuing him, and should he be Man United's number 1 for years to come? I'm very, very on the fence. I don't believe that he's such a terrible keeper, and he's a keeper that's causing Man United a lot of problems, because I just think that sometimes you can look at the stats, but you also got to use your eyes as well. And we say this all the time: use both of them in conjunction. And the stats don't always tell the full picture.
Yeah, look again. We are a tactical show, so let's try and keep it from tactics. Let's do look at stats, but then apply it to real world science. So, David De Gea is no doubt, in my mind, one of the best goalkeepers in the world. He is. You know, when you look at kind of his XG, how he affects defensive play for Man United this year, if David De Gea hadn't been in goal, Man United would have conceded 9 more goals. That's what the prediction would have been. That's what the metrics tell us. So those 9 goals mean that Man United might well have been in mid-table now. It is that kind of dramatic. But let's kind of look at the pros and the cons. The pros of this is that David De Gea is one of the best shot stoppers in the world, but he's also not very good with his feet. Now, I think that he's actually better with his feet than people do give him credit for, but it's more about, again, effective XG. How do you get that ball forward? How do you play out from the back and get your team being effective at the other end of the football pitch from the back? And your goalkeeper has become a massive part of that. So I think when you compare all the metrics together, David De Gea rates as about the 4th best goalkeeper in the Premier League when you take into account everything. When you take into account how good they are with their feet, how they stop goals, catching ability.
Who's the top 4? Who's ahead of him, Rob? I'm interested to hear.
Well, the top 3, just again from memory, are the 2 you would expect. And that is Ederson, Alisson. And that's because they have such a huge upside in getting their team out from the back to the front. A huge upside. And they also save the ball. And they also have the best clean sheet record. And they also have conceded the least goals. But number 3, last year this was as well, and it's a player who gets criticised a lot, was actually Lloris. So you look at Lloris and what he does at Tottenham. He's a player that people now say is rubbish. You know, so this is what happened with De Gea. So when you look at De Gea, he's kind of rated 4th overall over that 12-month span. But the big problem is he's about 18th with his feet. So when you break it down, he's about number 18 or 17 in the league. So there's another 7. There's a ton of goalkeepers better than him on the deck.
Well, he's bottom 3.
That's a problem if your goalkeeper is relegation on the floor, right? That is a big problem. So should Man United give him a new deal? I'm on the fence as well. I do like David De Gea, and I've always supported him. And I did say last year that I think there was a natural transition with his form being poor at that time to Dean Henderson. Dean Henderson is better on the deck. Dean Henderson is not a sweeper keeper, not by any means. He's a bit better positionally. He'll play on the edge of his box. He'll come for the ball more. And that's, I think, where De Gea's weakness is that he does not help his centre-backs in those moments. How often do you see maybe the ball go behind Magure and it's De Gea sweeping behind, getting it? It's rare, isn't it? It doesn't happen a lot.
I can't even remember the last time De Gea did that.
So that's a problem, because at those other 2 clubs who are winning everything, City and Liverpool, their goalkeepers do that, and they do it for fun. That helps in those moments. That means that your XG of expected goals to concede goes down massively, because that's what they do. Because De Gea doesn't do it, that makes Man United vulnerable. Yes, he's saved a ton of goals this year. He's been sensational. He's the player of the year at the moment, as it stands, because he's made so many game-saving opportunities. He's what he is. Can you coach it? No, I don't think you can coach someone to be completely, personality-wise, completely different. I don't think David De Gea is suddenly going to be a sweeper keeper coming off his line and playing 40-yard cutting passes to the fullback and getting you out. I don't think that can ever happen. But what you can do is you could bring in a number 2 that does that to De Gea, a replacement, and allow them to work together, and then actually have a goalkeeper that in games that you need to be better at passing the ball out, to actually be able to rotate that keeper and be able to do that. I don't think Dean Henderson's the answer to that. We know that Dean Henderson will leave the football club. I think that's absolutely nailed on. But you do need to maybe bring in a young goalkeeper who is more of a sweeper keeper and can learn under De Gea and learn all the good stuff that De Gea does, and eventually have that transition. But it's a difficult one, Haider, because what we're effectively saying here is that David De Gea is your player of the season, but you might have to get rid of him.
Can I add something, which is very, very... a lot of people look and he's had the most saves as well. That's not a good stat. Man United keepers should never have the most. Yeah. But that's not a bad reflection on him. That's a bad reflection on the team, the defensive structure, and the chances that we're conceding.
Yeah, it's bad on
But
the back four and bad on
yeah.
the midfielders. So
Yeah.
like those chances of and he's saving big chances. Like when we look at the metrics again, he's not little P rollers that he's picking up off the ground. He's having to put his hand in the top and right bottom corners, and that's the only time he's getting beaten. The goal that Leeds scored was a complete fluke. People blamed him for it. They're very, very hard in those weather conditions where you can hardly see. You know, I think he wears contact lenses as well, so that water would have been in his eyes. And it was really, really difficult to see a ball looped over that's sliced and ends up right in the top corner. You know, he should have been maybe back on his line by another inch or two. He might have saved it, but I'm not blaming him for that. I really am not. It's just a freak goal, and it happens in football. But other than that, he does do those shot-stopping duties, but the game is changing. And it means that Man United want to be more like Man City. It means that you might have to move out your goalkeeper, who is very, very good, but then have a goalkeeper that maybe is not as good shot stopper, but is much better on the deck and allows your defense to breathe a little bit more. You know, actually does the sweeper keeper stuff and can pick out passes.
That man is Jose Sarr that plays for Wolves. Been phenomenal this season.
Brilliant.
Great with his feet. Good shot stopper. If Man United are going to look for a goalkeeper, that's who I'd like us to go for. To be honest.
And I think he's a top 6 rated goalkeeper this year. Like when you look at the metrics, he's doing all the other work as well. So he is great on the deck. But if you said to a lot of Man United fans tomorrow, "Oh yeah, we're going to replace Wolves goalkeeper and going to come in for David De Gea, who's a lifetime legend at Man United," I think again most Man United fans would not be hot on it. You know, they just wouldn't. It's just not a populist kind of transfer. But it is the kind of thing you need to do. No one knew who Ederson was when he came to the club. And when Alisson went for 80 odd million from Roma, people went, what? 80 million for a goalkeeper who's a, shot stopper and not very big. That's a lot of money. And yet it was the right transfer. Klopp got the player he needed. And I think the next manager coming in is important. Like you just mentioned that Ten Hag, obviously we know he's massively rated in terms of Man United's board and will he come to the football club? The answer to that might be yes. And if it is yes, does he want De Gea in goal? I'm not so sure.
No, I agree with that. And that's what I'm thinking because obviously it could be Ten Hag, could be Pochettino, it could even be... I think Rangnick likes him and I think Rangnick would probably keep him. But Ten Hag would definitely... I mean, Onana obviously was the keeper at Ajax. I believe he's now going to Inter. So
I don't know if Rangnick would keep him. I think Rangnick would want a keeper. When you play the counter press, you want your goalkeeper to counter press as well. Yeah, so you want your centre backs to do it, your full backs to do it, and you want your goalkeeper to go and meet the striker. Yeah, if the striker's coming through, you want your goalkeeper on the edge of the box. And I did notice that with De Gea and Henderson, when they've played for United, their starting position is on the edge of the box more than in the goal. It's just that up here, that's not where it's natural to them. They don't think they've got to go meet. Where Ederson is literally like playing as a midfielder at times, coming and meeting the ball and cutting off those passes. Rangnick, as a counter presser, would love that in his goalkeeper. And I don't think if Rangnick was a manager next year, I think there's every chance that he would move De Gea on as a big move out and bring in another goalkeeper, a younger goalkeeper that can do those modern day goalkeeping things.
He'd probably move both of them on, to be honest. But Rob, look, right before we wrap up, let's just quickly, a couple of minutes, touch on our thoughts for the Atletico game. They aren't playing well. This is a comment here from PA, but will be a completely different game. Obviously, to the Leeds one, nowhere near the space Leeds give up.
Yeah,
I was actually not too pleased to have Atletico. Obviously, we saw the whole farce with the draw, and they messed up. And we initially had PSG, and that'd been interesting, obviously, against Pochettino. But look, Atletico are in very poor form, but they're going to be very difficult to break down. They're going to be well organized. Simeone is a big game manager. We've done a masterclass on Simeone, guys. Make sure you do check that out. Actually, the Simeone podcast we did because we broke down his tactics. And we talked about his career. There's a comment here saying Ronaldo time. Look, Ronaldo loves playing against Atletico. He loves scoring against them. But what are your thoughts for it? Because I think United's starting to pick up a nice little bit of form. Atletico have a couple of game changes. I actually saw a comment today. I don't know who it was from saying that Suarez and Griezmann will both be on the bench. I don't know if that's true or not. But how do you see this one playing out for Man United? There won't be space. We probably will have more possession. But we're going to have to break them down, and we're going to have to. We're going to have to. It's going to be a difficult game. I'm not too sure how it'll go, if I'm honest with you.
It's a tough game, no doubt about it. Simeone is a tough manager. Atletico, when they're playing well, are tough. The positive for Man United and the positive for Rangnick is that Atletico are built to counter press. You can counter press them, no doubt about it. When you look at the man for man and you look at kind of what United can do, United can win the ball back quickly in midfield against this team, the way they move the ball. They'll move the ball slower than a Premier League team will. They won't do what Burnley do and hit the channel and make you go backwards. they will play more through the middle. They'll play like a typical Spanish team. And that actually helps Man United set up and actually kind of conserve and be economical in their work rate. So you win the ball back and all the energy is about then getting forward in those 1 or 2 transitional passes. Who does that also help? Cristiano Ronaldo. Much easier to run that last man and being able to look at that and being used to those Spanish systems. Cristiano knows it like the back of his hand. And I think it's actually a good matchup for Man United. But of course, they have to execute. And I don't think it's going to be a slow chess match. I really don't. I think it's going to be a kind of battle of 4-4-2 variations. So both these two managers like to be in those variations. United might go back to a 4-2-2-2 because that will suit playing Atletico. But we'll have to wait and see. Let's see how it goes. I think that when we talk about Suarez and Griezmann, of course, they're these players that can give you an X factor and they might be saved for later on in the game. You might see that Atletico set up more discipline just because they've been giving up chances and goals that in previous years Simeone teams don't give up. So I think Simeone will be conscious of that, and he will be very conscious of the fact that there's a certain Cristiano up top. That's where sometimes the allure of Cristiano more than his work rate can work in your favour, because it then opens up space for Bruno, opens up space for Jadon, and it opens up space for Paul Pogba.
Absolutely. And guys, look, thanks so much for all your fantastic comments. It's great to be back, Robbie. It has been a while, obviously. And we always love talking about United. And obviously when Man United win, we always enjoy that conversation. Just so that you guys know, we are going to be doing the masterclass once a week. Obviously, there's games coming up, double game weeks, etc. We're doing once a week. So look, for example, if United play on the Saturday, we'll go live on the Sunday, Rob, at midday. And obviously if we're on the Sunday, we'll go live around about this time on the Monday. So just make sure, if you don't see, obviously, the posts on Twitter, just don't worry, we will be going live. It just gives us a little bit of time to digest. And obviously, Sheshar is here, and he's asking about the FPL. Yes, the FPL Masterclass will be back. I believe we are back on Wednesday for that. Yeah. Look, unfortunately, Rob was sick, so we couldn't do it. But don't worry, we are back. Rob, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
No, nothing really to add. I just think that Man United not in too bad of a place at the moment. I like Rangnick. I know that all the talk in the next few weeks is going to be about Ten Hag and Pochettino, and there's reasons for that. And, we will also talk about that. If you said to me right at this moment of time, would you give Rangnick a contract? I would still say yes. I'm sticking to it because I like what I'm seeing. I'm liking the building through the foundations of Manchester United with the players that he's got. The players are definitely happy with what they're doing with the work. I think they're okay with it, and it's a developing story, isn't it? I think with this system. So let's wait and see. I think it's going to be so much to talk about when it comes to the next manager. I get the feeling it probably won't be Rangnick. I'm just giving you my personal opinion there. But yeah, stick with us, and we'll do tactics with you once a week, as you said there. Also, guys, I do my the Promised Land podcast on Tuesdays and Fridays, so you'll be able to get that on Spotify and on YouTube. So please subscribe to that. And as we just talked about there, our FPL show will generally go 2 days out live on Twitter before the deadline. So the deadline this week is Friday. So we will go out on the Wednesday, and it gives you 2 days then to watch the show, to share the show, and look at all the stats and bits and bobs that we give you, and then make your changes on deadline day.
Absolutely. Guys, as always, give myself a follow on at Haider_Rubbani. Give Rob a follow on at _Rob_B. And make sure you check out the Promised Land. You can see Rob will tweet about it. We'll chuck it as well in the description so you guys can have a look at that, because Rob is on that regularly twice a week. And obviously we do this once a week. Give us a follow on at TF Masterclass. Look, Man United have beaten Leeds. It's always fun to beat your rivals, especially Leeds. Are we on the up? I don't know, Rob. I think the signs are there. We can't get too high, can't get too low. But look, if we beat Atletico and we beat Watford on the weekend, we definitely have, reasons to be positive. Anyway, guys, see you later, and we'll see you all next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.